Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of clinical precision.
Right, like a clear black and white answer.
Exactly. You fall, you hurt your arm, you go to the hospital, and the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the black film. The doctor just points and says, there it is, that is the break.
Broken or not broken, it's clean.
Yeah, it's entirely clean. But if you step into the world of enterprise business processes, suddenly that x-ray machine is just completely useless.
Oh, absolutely.
You look for the operational bottleneck, and you don't get a clean white line. You just see this chaotic blur of endless email chains, disjointed spreadsheets, whispered hallway conversations, and, delayed invoices.
It's a mess.
It really is. You are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely murky. So our mission for today's deep dive is to fix that broken machine. We are going to architect a fully automated, digitally sound process from absolute scratch.
And we're going to do it step by specific step.
Yes, together. Now look, if you are showing up today looking for high-level, abstract corporate theory about digital transformation, you have stumbled into the wrong room.
Yeah, you might want to skip this one.
Seriously, because we are getting into the absolute architectural weeds today. We are extracting the exact configurations, the foundational logic, and the actionable commands from the latest SAP Build Process Automation training modules.
And we are going to master them by tackling a very specific, very real-world scenario, the sales order management process.
Right. And it is the perfect crucible for this kind of learning, isn't it?
It really is, because the sales order process is something almost every single mid to large enterprise on Earth deals with daily.
Yeah.
And yet it is notoriously, stubbornly prone to exactly the kind of diagnostic muddy waters you just described.
So true. But before we start placing digital bricks and, building our architecture, we have to thoroughly understand the disease we are trying to cure here.
Right, we have to look closely at the nightmare scenario, the thing that makes a tool like SAP Build Process Automation not just a nice-to-have, but an absolute necessity for survival.
Okay, so let's define the terms. So you, the listener, and both of us are operating from the exact same baseline.
Good idea.
For anyone who needs a quick refresher, a sales order is fundamentally a document that confirms a sale after a purchase order is received from a buyer.
It's the internal trigger for a company to actually do the work.
Exactly. It contains the agreed-upon price, the specific quantity of goods, the buyer's billing and shipping details, and, the expected timeline.
Right.
And in our baseline scenario today, which alarmingly is still the reality for a massive percentage of Fortune 500 companies, this incredibly critical document is being handled entirely manually.
I call it the manual trap. It is just a slow, agonizing drain on operational efficiency.
Oh, for sure.
Let's trace the life cycle of a single manual order just to highlight where the friction points are.
Yeah, walk us through it.
Imagine a senior sales rep. They receive a purchase order from a major client. Maybe it comes in as a PDF attachment via email, or maybe it's just dictated over a phone call.
Right.
The very first thing this highly paid sales professional has to do is act as a basic data entry clerk.
Which they hate.
They despise it. They open up a massive shared network spreadsheet, perhaps an Excel file that 30 other people are also trying to edit simultaneously.
Oh, that is the worst. And we all know what happens when 30 people are editing a shared spreadsheet.
Utter chaos.
Rows get overwritten, formatting gets broken, someone accidentally sorts by date and completely scrambles the entire database.
Exactly. But let's assume, just for the sake of the narrative, that the data entry goes perfectly.
A miracle occurs.
Right. The sales rep looks at the order amount. Let's say it's a massive $1 million equipment order. Because it's over a certain threshold, company policy dictates it needs managerial approval.
Okay, makes sense.
So the rep has to manually color code that row in the spreadsheet to red to mark it as urgent. Then, and this is the part that truly hurts my soul from an efficiency standpoint, they have to draft a brand new email, attach the PDF of the purchase order, and send it to an approver.
Which assumes they even know who the correct approver is.
Precisely. In a complex, multinational enterprise, the routing rules are completely Byzantine.
Yeah, the rep might have to consult a completely separate, likely outdated Word document just to figure out if an order for $1 million originating in the North American sector going to a subsidiary in Germany
goes to the VP of sales, the regional director, or the chief financial officer.
Exactly. It's a guessing game. So they play detective, they find the supposed right person, they send the email, and then, they wait.
The process falls into a black hole.
Yep. The approver is a busy executive who gets 400 emails a day. The sales order is buried under newsletter subscriptions and meeting invites.
And 2 days go by.
2 days go by. The client is asking for confirmation. So the sales rep has to perform the most dreaded corporate task of all time.
Sending the manual reminder email.
Just bumping this to the top of your inbox.
It is interpersonal friction at its finest.
Right. The rep feels like a nag, the manager feels harassed, and the client feels ignored.
Eventually, the manager replies with a single word. Approved.
No context.
No context, just approved. Now, as the grand finale of this manual circus, the sales rep has to take that approved email, go into their actual enterprise resource planning software.
Let's say it's SAP S4NA.
And manually retype every single piece of information from the spreadsheet into the ERP to actually generate the invoice and trigger the warehouse to ship the goods.
It is like trying to conduct a complex symphony where every musician is locked in a different soundproof room, and they are trying to communicate the tempo to each other via carrier pigeon.
That is a terrifying, accurate analogy.
Yeah.
And the cascading effects of that pigeon-based symphony are actively destructive.
How so?
Well, we aren't just talking about a mild annoyance. The time from lead to cash, the metric that dictates a company's actual cash flow, is elongated unnecessarily by days or even weeks.
Which hits the bottom line.
Exactly. Plus, you introduce a massive surface area for human error at 3 different manual entry points. You risk entirely lost orders if an email goes to a spam folder.
Right.
And perhaps most critically, you destroy your employee experience. You are forcing talented, expensive humans to act as routers for raw data.
Which they will resent.
Deeply. This is where the core philosophy of SAP Build Process Automation becomes vital. The platform acts as a low-code, no-code engine designed specifically to slaughter the carrier pigeons.
I love that.
We're going to replace that manual ping-pong with a digital, automated, centralized architecture.
Okay, so we agree the pigeon has to die. The manual process is a massive liability. But how do we actually begin to build the digital replacement? Where do we even log in?
Good question.
Because the documentation talks heavily about the SAP BTP free tier, which is a fantastic sandbox for you to practice everything we were discussing today. But once you subscribe to the service, the very first screen you hit is called the SAP Build Lobby.
Yes, the lobby.
I really want to unpack this conceptually because it doesn't just look like a standard file explorer like your Windows desktop or whatever.
It's definitely not just a simple folder system.
Yeah.
The lobby is your central nervous system for development within the SAP Build ecosystem.
Okay.
Think of it as a unified workbench. It is designed to aggregate absolutely everything. This is where you manage the projects you've created from scratch, but it's also where you see projects that other developers in your organization have shared with you.
Oh, so it's collaborative.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Furthermore, it acts as a gateway to the broader SAP ecosystem. You can import pre-built content, templates, and best practice workflows directly from the SAP store into your lobby.
Oh, that's smart. It prevents the silo effect where, 10 different developers are building 10 different variations of a sales order process on their local machines.
Exactly. So it's a collaborative environment right out of the gate.
Right. Now, when you click the button in the lobby to create something new, the source materials highlight 2 primary project types that we need to dissect before we do anything else.
This is a crucial distinction.
Yeah. The first is the business process project. The literature describes this as the core workhorse. This is the environment for creating, deploying, automating, and running your actual digital processes. Things like investment requests, employee onboarding workflows, or, well, in our specific mission today, the sales order approvals.
Right. If you want a human to interact with a form, or you want a system to make a logical decision based on rules, you're building a business process project.
Okay.
But the second type is where the true enterprise power lies, and that is the actions project.
The actions project.
This is slightly more abstract. An actions project is fundamentally designed to encapsulate the APIs of remote systems.
Okay, let's pause and translate that, because encapsulating remote APIs is a phrase that can instantly alienate someone who doesn't have a background in software engineering.
Fair enough.
What does an actions project actually do in plain English?
All right, imagine your SAP Build Process Automation environment is a highly efficient factory, but it only speaks English.
Okay, I'm picturing an English factory.
Now imagine you have a 15-year-old on-premise legacy customer relationship management database sitting in a server room in a different country, and it only speaks French.
Typical corporate acquisition scenario.
Exactly. Those 2 systems cannot naturally talk to each other. An API, an application programming interface, is essentially the physical telephone line between them, but you still need a translator.
Enter the Actions project.
Exactly. The Actions project allows you to upload an open API specification file. The SAP training notes this must be formatted as a .json file.
JSON.
Right. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It is a very lightweight, human-readable format for storing and transporting data.
So what does it actually look like if you open it?
It looks like a simple text file filled with key-value pairs wrapped in curly braces. For example, the key might be the word customer name, in quotes, followed by a colon, and the value might be Acme Core, in quotes.
Got it. So by uploading this JSON file into an Actions project, you are basically handing your English-speaking factory a complete English to French dictionary.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
You are defining exactly how SAP Build can reach out over the telephone line, ask the French database for the customer's credit score, and actually understand the answer it gets back.
Precisely. It allows you to embed external skills and capabilities directly into your workflows. You can pull data from external systems or push data out to them without having to write thousands of lines of custom integration code.
Which saves a massive amount of development time.
Huge. You encapsulate that complexity into a neat little actions project, and then you can just drag and drop that action into your business process project whenever you need it.
That is incredibly powerful for breaking down data silos.
Mm.
But for our specific mission today, your very first hands-on action item as a learner is to focus on the first type.
Right. We need the core process.
You are going to create a business process project. You name it, you give it a description, and this becomes your ultimate container. It is going to hold all the artifacts we're about to build, the forms, the automation logic, the decision trees.
Everything goes in the box.
Right. But let me challenge this architectural choice for a moment.
Sure, go ahead.
Why create this rigid container first? I mean, if I'm using a consumer tool like Zapier, or even just setting up a basic email role, I just jump in and start saying, if this, then that.
You just want to start drawing the flow.
Yeah. Why does SAP force this extra architectural layer of a project container before I can even draw my very first workflow line?
Well, it is a fundamental difference between consumer-grade task automation and enterprise-grade process architecture. It really comes down to the necessity of encapsulation and lifecycle management.
Okay, unpack that.
Think about the reality of enterprise software. You are never going to build this sales order process, finish it, and just leave it sitting in your initial development environment forever.
Right. It eventually has to go live.
Exactly. And usually it has to move across multiple distinct landscapes. You build it in a development environment, then you have to migrate it to a quality assurance environment so the testing team can try to break it.
Which they always do.
Always. And once it passes QA, you have to transport it to the live production environment where the actual sales reps use it.
So that's a journey.
A very strict journey. If you just built a loose workflow without a project container, if your forms were saved in one place, your API dictionary in another, and your routing logic somewhere else, you would face dependency hell every time you tried to move it.
You'd essentially be trying to move a house by throwing individual bricks into the back of a pickup truck and just, hoping you remember how to stack them at the new lot.
Yes. By forcing you to group all related artifacts into one business process project container, the system ensures that when you transport that project, all of its dependencies travel with it securely.
Ah, I see.
The trigger forms, the back-end logic conditions, the specific data variables, they're all bundled together into a single cohesive unit. You ensure that your architecture survives the journey from development to production without losing any critical pieces.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. It's a digital briefcase that securely holds all the required files for the trip. So we have our container, we are inside the project, the foundation is poured.
Time to build.
But a foundation doesn't do much if you don't have a way to enter the building. We need to architect the front door.
The intake.
Right. We need data to actually enter this pristine digital system we are building, and we have to completely eradicate that awful manual paper intake process we discussed earlier. We need forms.
Every automated process, no matter how complex it gets on the back end, requires a starting point. It requires a trigger to wake the system up and say, hey, I have work for you to do.
Wake up, time to work.
Exactly. Now, the SAP training materials outline 3 primary methodologies for triggering a business process.
Yeah, the sources define these very clearly, and they cater to different levels of technical sophistication. First, there is the API call trigger.
This is where you initiate your business process programmatically from an external system via an API call.
If you use this method, you have to rigidly define the required input parameters in your project so they can be reused as input fields for the rest of the workflow.
That is essentially a system saying to SAP Build, here is a raw packet of data, start running.
No human involvement.
Zero human involvement. The second type is an event trigger. This is slightly more passive, but incredibly responsive. It is used for automating actions based on events happening deep within external backend systems.
So instead of a system actively pushing data to us, our SAP build process is sitting quietly, listening for a specific alarm bell to ring.
That's exactly it. Let's say a warehouse system logs that inventory for a specific part has dropped below 10 units. That system emits a low inventory event.
Okay.
Your SAP build process can be configured to listen specifically for that one event. The moment it hears it, the trigger fires, and the process starts perhaps automatically generating a purchase order to restock the part. Wow. So both the API and event triggers are essentially machine-to-machine interactions. They are completely invisible to the average employee.
They are. But the third type is profoundly human-centric. And that is exactly what we need to solve the manual entry problem for our sales reps. That is the form trigger.
The form trigger. It is the digital translation of the paper purchase order.
Yes.
It is how you guide a human being to give you exactly the data you need in exactly the format you require to make the rest of the automation work flawlessly.
You're building the guardrails.
So it's learner action item time. We're going to build this trigger form, but instead of just listing out the UI clicks like some boring audio manual, I really want to discuss the strategy behind these configurations because the source material is very specific about how we build this.
It's all about intentional design.
Right. So in your business process project, you add a trigger, you select submit a form, and you choose to start with a blank canvas. You name it order processing form, and you write a description. Form to collect order details.
Seems basic.
Yeah, let me ask you this. How important is that description field, really? I mean, can't we just skip it? We know what the form is for.
Skipping the description is the original sin of amateur development.
Wow, original sin.
It is. It seems trivial on day one when you're actively building it. But enterprise systems live for years, sometimes decades.
That's true.
6 months from now, you might move to a different department, and a junior developer has to open this project to debug an issue. If they see 10 forms, all named variations of order form 1, order form 2, with no descriptions, they are flying completely blind.
They have to open each one just to see what it does.
Exactly. Taking the 10 seconds to write a clear, concise description like form to collect order details from sales reps for initial intake is a best practice that acts as embedded documentation. It saves countless hours of forensic analysis later on.
A small investment for long-term sanity. I like it. So we open the editor and we start designing the layout. We drag over a headline element. Order approval request form. We add a paragraph element beneath it. Please provide the necessary information of your order and submit for approvals.
Very clear.
This feels very basic, but I assume it serves a psychological purpose.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
You are setting the context for the human user. Remember, they are used to a chaotic spreadsheet where they can type anything anywhere. You are guiding them through a new digital front door.
Okay.
The headline confirms they are in the right place, and the paragraph tells them exactly what is expected of them. You are actively reducing their cognitive load.
Now we get to the meat of the form.
Yeah.
The actual data fields. This is where we build what is essentially a data contract between the user and the system.
The contract is key.
The source material emphasizes a crucial, non-negotiable configuration for every single one of the fields we're about to add. They must be checked as required. There is a specific toggle in the configuration pane on the right side of the screen for this, but look, let me play devil's advocate on behalf of every sales rep ever.
Oh.
Sales reps hate required fields. They want to submit the order quickly with whatever fragmented info they have on hand, secure their commission, and, just figure out the missing details later.
I'll fill it in on Friday.
Exactly. Why must we force them to fill out every single field up front?
Because allowing incomplete data at the point of entry destroys the entire premise of automated logic.
How so?
Well, if you don't make the order amount field required, and a rep submits a blank field, what happens when that data reaches your back-end logic that says, if amount is greater than 1 million, route to the CEO?
Oh, the system tries to evaluate whether null or blank is greater than 1 million.
And it crashes. The workflow fails. An error log is generated. The IT department has to get involved to manually restart the instance, and you have just spent more money fixing the automation than you would have spent doing it manually in the first place.
So enforcing required fields is how you protect the integrity of the downstream process.
It is your first line of defense.
So we stand our ground against the sales team. The data must be complete. Now, the exact list of fields dictated by the SAP training is very deliberate regarding data type.
This is where it gets technical.
First, we add a text field for customer name, required. Another text field for order number, required. But then it specifies we must add a number field, not a text field, specifically a number field for the order amount, required.
Crucial distinction.
Then a date field for order date, required. A text field for shipping country, required. And finally, a second date field for expected delivery date, required.
The documentation stresses these specific data types for a profound architectural reason.
What's the reason?
The choice to force a number UI component for the amount and a calendar date picker UI component for the dates acts as your primary frontline defense against data corruption.
Unpack that for us. Why is enforcing data types at the point of entry, this concept of data hygiene, so critical to the broader architecture?
Because if we zoom out and look at the ultimate destination for this data, it is going to end up in an enterprise ERP system like SO or ANTA.
Right, the system of record.
And an ERP is a highly structured, fiercely rigid database environment. It expects a date to arrive formatted precisely as a date string, perhaps year, month, day.
YYYMMDD.
Exactly. It expects an order amount to be a pure numerical float value so it can instantly perform taxation and discount calculations.
So what happens if we just gave the sales rep a generic text box for the delivery date?
Human nature takes over. One rep might type 101222026. Another might type October 12th. A third rep, in a rush, might literally just type the letters ASAP or next Friday.
And the form would accept it because technically ASAP is text.
Exactly. But a week later, when your automated workflow attempts to execute an API call to push the string of characters ASAP into a rigid date column in an S4 and SQL database, the database throws a massive type mismatch error. The payload is violently rejected, the API connection times out, the automation throws a fatal exception.
And once again, IT has to intervene, manually translating ASAP into a calendar date to unstick the pipeline.
Exactly. By enforcing the data type on the trigger form, forcing the user to click a calendar widget to select a date, forcing them to use numerical keys for the amount you are actively engineering human error out of the process right at the front door.
You are sanitizing the inputs before they can infect the rest of the system.
That is exactly what you're doing.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. It's not just about building a pretty user interface. It's about structural data integrity and protecting the database.
Yes.
Okay, so we've established our robust front door. The data is clean, complete, and correctly formatted. But a form is just a digital black hole if nobody is on the other side.
It just sits there.
Right. How do we ensure this doesn't just sit endlessly in a database? Who actually gets the tap on the shoulder? This brings us to the middlemen. We need to architect the approval and notification forms.
This phase of the architecture is where we actively replace those messy, manual email chains and the agonizing wait times we dissected in the intro.
So let's start with the approval form. Your action item as a learner. Inside the process builder, you are going to create a new artifact. Specifically, you choose a blank approval and name it approval form.
And give it a description.
Always give it that vital description we talked about. You open the editor, add your context headlines, but here is where we hit a massive, crucial technical mandate from the sources. We have to display the data the sales rep submitted so the manager can review it.
Right. They need to see what they're approving.
So we add fields for customer name, order number, order amount, and order delivery date. But you must go into the detailed configuration pane for every single one of these specific fields and check the box that says read only.
I want to spend a moment here because checking that read-only box is not just a UI preference. It is a fundamental pillar of workflow governance and audit compliance.
But let me push back again. Let's say a manager gets the approval form. They look at the order amount and they realize the sales rep made a tiny typo. They missed a 0.
It happens all the time.
Right. Why can't the manager just click into the field, add the 0, hit approve, and save everyone the hassle of rejecting it back to the rep? Why lock it down so aggressively?
Because if you allow an approver to alter the original data midstream, you completely obliterate the integrity and traceability of the original request. Think of it like putting the sales data under museum glass.
Museum glass, I like that.
The approver is invited to look closely at the artifact, to evaluate it, to authenticate it, but they are absolutely forbidden from taking a Sharpie to the canvas and changing the detail.
The museum glass analogy makes perfect sense.
If the manager changes the price on the approval form, the system records that the order was approved for $100,000, but the sales rep's original submission was $10,000.
So there's a mismatch.
A huge mismatch. If an external auditor, say, during a Sarbanes-Oxley compliance audit reviews the system logs, they see a massive discrepancy between the intake form and the approval form with no documented reason why.
It looks like fraud.
It looks exactly like fraud. Making the fields read-only ensures the payload of data remains strictly immutable during the review phase. If it's wrong, the manager must reject it, forcing the rep to submit a new, clean, corrected original request. It preserves the unbroken chain of evidence.
Okay, so the data is safely under glass, but we do want the approver to interact with the form in specific, controlled ways to provide their feedback.
Yes, we need their input.
The tutorial directs us to add 2 interactive elements beneath the read-only data. First, a checkbox. The label is a very formal declaration. I acknowledge that we have received your order and will process it based on the availability.
A formal sign-off.
And second, a text area field labeled Message to Buyer.
This is how you enforce structured feedback.
Yeah.
You are taking away the manager's ability to just reply with a vague free text email that just says, looks fine.
Right.
You are forcing them to actively check a compliance acknowledgement, and you are providing a dedicated, constrained box for any necessary context or conditions regarding their approval or rejection.
Now, here is where the architecture gets genuinely brilliant. We have to configure the task routing and the deadlines for this approval step.
This is my favorite part.
In the overarching process builder, you click on the approval form step to open its settings pane. You set the subject line dynamically to Review and Approve Order From, and then you insert the company variable. You assign the user. Now, in the tutorial environment for testing, you just assign it to Process Started By, so it writes back to yourself.
Right, though obviously in live production environment, that user assignment would be dynamic. It would query a company hierarchy database to find the specific manager assigned to that sales rep's region.
Exactly. But it's the next configuration setting that blows my mind, the time limits.
Yes.
The documentation instructs you to select static duration and enter the number 2. You mentioned earlier that this specific setting solves the manual reminder email problem. Unpack the mechanics of that. What does that 2 actually do in the back end?
That simple configuration of a static duration of 2-pin is honestly one of the most powerful systemic features in the entire SAP Build platform.
Really? Just a simple timer?
It's more than a timer. It introduces the concept of inherently enforced service-level agreements, or SLAs, directly into the workflow engine.
So it's not just a guideline, it's a countdown clock.
Exactly. The moment that approval task is generated and hits the manager's digital inbox, the SAP Build Process Automation system starts an invisible timer. It knows the manager has exactly 2 days to resolve the task.
But let me interrupt. What if the manager is at a conference? What if they are on vacation in a zone with no Wi-Fi? Doesn't this static duration just create a new kind of bottleneck where the automated system is just screaming at an empty desk?
That is a fantastic point, and it's exactly why enterprise tools differ from basic email. The static duration isn't just an alarm clock that rings indefinitely in an empty room.
What does it do?
It is a trigger for automated escalation. If the manager doesn't act within those 2 days, the workflow engine can be configured to take autonomous action. It can dynamically reroute the approval to a designated backup manager.
Oh, wow.
It can escalate the task to the manager's boss. It can send a high-priority red-flagged alert to a specific Teams channel.
So the system literally takes over the emotional burden of nagging.
Precisely. The sales rep never, ever has to draft an awkward email saying, hey, just bubbling this up to the top of your inbox, did you look at my order?
Thank goodness.
The automated engine enforces the accountability ruthlessly and silently. It entirely removes the interpersonal friction from the office dynamic while guaranteeing the process keeps moving.
That is a massive quality of life improvement for everyone involved. Now, there is one final, highly technical configuration step required to make this approval form actually function.
Data mapping.
Exactly, mapping inputs. The sources stress this heavily. Just because you dragged a read-only field onto your canvas and named it order amount doesn't mean it magically knows what the order amount is.
Right. The computer's incredibly literal. You have to explicitly tell the system where to fetch that specific piece of data.
So in the configuration panel for the approval step, you have to map the process content, which is the payload of data that was gathered back at step 1 by the trigger form, to the specific inputs of the approval form.
You are drawing the lines.
Yeah, you are basically taking the variable for order amount from Form A and drawing a conceptual wire to plug it into the read-only field for order amount on Form B. You are manually passing the baton of data from one runner to the next.
It is called data binding, and it's a critical concept to master, because if you forget to map even one field, well, that field will just show a blank on the manager screen and the process stalls.
Got it. Okay, so the approval form is fully architected, but we are only halfway done with the middleman.
We need to close the loop.
The communication loop needs to be closed. If a manager approves or rejects the order, the original sales rep needs to be notified immediately so they can tell the client. Action item time. Building the notification forms. We start by creating a blank form named Order Confirmation Form. We add a headline, "Your order has been received and accepted." And then, just like before, we add read-only fields for order number, order amount, and expected delivery date.
And crucially, we also map a read-only field to display that message to buyer variable we captured from the manager in the approval step. We want the sales rep to see any specific notes the manager added.
The data mapping principle is exactly the same here. We are just passing the baton to the third runner in the relay. But here is where the SAP training offers a massive time-saving tip.
I love this trick.
Obviously, if we have an approval confirmation, we also need an order rejection form, but the documentation explicitly tells you not to build it from scratch.
Why reinvent the wheel when the chassis is identical?
Exactly. You go to your completed order confirmation form in the project overview, you click the 3 little dots icon, the More Options menu, and you hit Duplicate.
Instantly, you have a perfect clone.
A perfect clone of the layout and the fields. You simply rename the clone Order Rejection Form. You change the headline text to say the order cannot be accepted. But there is one very specific configuration tweak required for this rejection form when you add it to the process flow.
This is where we use system metadata to drive human urgency.
Right. You go into the settings for the rejection step in the process flow, and you find the priority dropdown. By default, it's set to normal. You must change it to high. Why is that metadata change so important?
Because it changes how the task is rendered in the end user's UI. When a sales order is rejected, it usually means there's a critical problem.
Pricing is wrong, inventory is depleted.
Exactly. Or the client's credit failed. It requires immediate remediation from the sales rep to save the deal. By flagging the notification form priority as high in the back-end architecture, it will visually flag as red or bolded at the very top of the sales rep's task inbox.
So you are using the architecture to dictate daily triage priorities.
Exactly. The system tells them what to fix first.
So let's step back and look at what we've accomplished in this section. We have built 3 distinct forms. We've mapped data across them. We've set up SLAs and priority flags. What does this all mean for the actual humans using the system?
By standardizing the intake, the approval, and the notifications into these deeply integrated digital forms, we achieve 3 massive enterprise-level victories.
Lay them out for us.
1, we have established perfect UI consistency. The rep and the manager always know exactly where to look on the screen to find the order number. 2, we have created a single unified access point. Users are no longer checking their email, a Slack channel, and a spreadsheet to figure out what they need to do today.
All tasks route to their central SAP inbox.
Exactly. And 3, perhaps most importantly for the CIO, we have created a fully traceable, mathematically precise action log.
The audit trail.
The SAP system natively records the exact millisecond the trigger form was submitted, the exact minute the manager clicked approve, and the exact data payload at every step. It entirely permanently eliminates the "I never got that email" excuse.
It's beautifully clean. It's an auditable masterpiece. But I have a major problem with it.
Oh, what's the problem?
Let's move into our next phase to discuss it. We have forms, and data is flowing seamlessly. But if you look at the blueprint we've built so far, our process is completely rigidly linear. It's a straight pipe. Every single order that comes in through the trigger form goes straight to the manager for approval. If a junior rep sells a $5 replacement charging cable, it goes to the manager. If a senior enterprise rep sells a $5 million server rack, it goes to the manager.
They both hit the same desk.
Right. By fixing the data entry problem, haven't we just created a massive human bottleneck at the approval stage?
You have correctly identified the difference between basic digitization and true automation.
Okay, what's the difference?
A linear digitized process is certainly better than paper, but it is not intelligent. It is just a faster conveyor belt leading to the same overwhelmed manager. To solve this, we need to introduce genuine intelligence into the architecture.
We need to teach the system how to think.
Core concept time. We are diving into conditional logic, known in computer science as the classic if-else statement.
Right.
The training introduces the concept of process conditions. Instead of a single straight pipe, we can add a junction box that branches the path of the workflow based on data.
So if a specific expression or rule is met, the process routes down one path. If it has not met the else's path, it routes down a different path.
Exactly. And our fundamental business goal here is simple. Eradicate unnecessary, low-value approvals.
Right. Why pay a highly compensated regional director to spend even 2 minutes reviewing and approving a routine, zero-risk $5 transaction?
It is a catastrophic waste of human capital.
So here is your action item for configuring this intelligence. In your process builder, right after the trigger form, but before the approval form, you click Add Process Step. You navigate to Controls and Events, you choose Condition, and you click Open Condition Editor.
The brain room.
Now we have to build the mathematical logic formula. We have to code the brain.
And we do this using the variables we've already defined.
Right. We want to set a financial threshold. Let's say company policy is that any order under $100,000 is considered low risk and does not need human review.
Okay.
So in the condition editor, you select the process content variable, order amount. You set the mathematical logic operator to is less than, and you set the absolute value to 100,000.
Conceptually, that is very straightforward logic. If the order amount variable is strictly less than 100,000, the condition evaluates as true, and the workflow routes the data down the auto-approve path.
Bypassing the manager entirely.
Bypassing them entirely and firing off the order confirmation form to the rep.
Simple, elegant. But enterprise business rules are rarely that simple, are they?
Almost never. Real-world business logic is messy and multifaceted.
Which is why the tutorial immediately adds complexity. What if the order is over $100,000, but it's going to a specific, deeply trusted regional subsidiary where we have a blanket safe harbor agreement?
We want to auto-approve those too.
Right, regardless of the massive amount. To do this, we have to add group logic to our condition. In the condition editor, you click Add Group. And this brings up a very important drop-down where you have to choose an operator, any or all. The tutorial specifies we must choose any.
I want to pause on this because choosing between any and all is where a lot of citizen developers make their very first logic error.
It's a common trap.
In Boolean logic terms, choosing any acts as an OR operator. Choosing all acts as an AND operator.
Let's break that down with our specific example. So under this new any group, we add 2 new rules. First, we select process content, shipping country, and set the value to India. Then we add a second rule beneath it, process content, shipping country, and set the value to Germany.
Okay, let's translate this entire complex formula from machine logic into plain conversational English to make sure it's crystal clear for the listener.
Think of this condition step as a very strict bouncer standing at the velvet rope of an exclusive nightclub.
The bouncer has a clipboard.
The bouncer has a clipboard with your company's rules. As every single sales order walks up to the door, the bouncer checks its ID. The rules are if your order amount is under 100K, or if your shipping country is India, or if your shipping country is Germany. You get to skip the velvet rope, bypass the manager's desk, and go straight to the auto-approval dance floor.
But if you walk up and your order is $150,000 on DE, you are shipping it to, say, France.
Yeah.
The bouncer evaluates your data, determines you do not meet any of the fast-track criteria, and physically points you to the else's line.
And that else's line leads directly to the manual approval form we built in the previous section.
Exactly.
I love the bouncer analogy. It makes the routing so visual. But let me push back on the business philosophy here. By setting up these automatic bypasses for high-value orders going to Germany or India, aren't we surrendering a massive amount of corporate control to an algorithm?
It feels like a loss of control, yes.
What if a $500,000 order to Germany has fraudulent pricing? We just let it slip through the net.
That is the eternal tightrope walk of process architecture. You are balancing risk tolerance against process efficiency. Yes, by automating, you accept a microscopically higher risk of edge case errors slipping through a designated safe harbor route.
Okay.
However, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this specific step, the condition step, is where process automation delivers exponential, measurable return on investment for an enterprise.
How does accepting slightly more risk generate massive ROI?
Because by using that conditional bouncer to automatically filter out the 80% of transactions that are high volume, standard, and low risk, you are preserving your company's most expensive and scarce resource.
Human cognitive capacity.
Exactly. You are freeing up your managers, directors, and compliance officers from the mind-numbing grind of rubber-stamping routine paperwork. Instead, you are deploying all of their focus, energy, and judgment purely on the 20% else's path.
The ones that actually need a human brain.
Yes. The high-value, complex, anomalous, or high-risk orders that actually require nuanced human intellect. You aren't just making the pipeline faster. You are fundamentally optimizing where human brain power is spent in your organization.
It's the ultimate Pareto principle application. 80% of the work is done by the algorithm, 20% by the humans. That is a massive paradigm shift from the manual spreadsheet days where humans did 100% of the work.
It changes the entire culture of the company.
Okay, so look at our blueprint now. We have built the secure project container. We've architected the trigger forms for clean data intake. We've mapped the immutable data to the approval and notification forms. We've established SLAs. And we've programmed the conditional logic brain to route traffic intelligently.
Looks good.
Our architecture is functionally complete, but
Right.
it only exists on our digital drafting board. How do we open the doors to the club? How do we push this out of the builder so the sales reps can actually start using it?
We have to navigate the final technical lifecycle steps defined by SAP: release, deploy, run, and monitor. And the distinction between these steps is vital for maintaining system stability.
Let's break them down meticulously. First, the release step. The SAT documentation says that when you click release, the system creates a permanent snapshot or a version of your project. It starts at version 1.0.0.
Right.
And crucially, once you release a project, you can never, ever edit that specific version again. It is cryptographically locked.
This becomes an immutable artifact, frozen in time.
Then you move to the second step, deploy. Deployment takes that locked frozen version 1.0.0 and actively pushes it into the runtime environment on the SAT servers.
It makes it live.
This is the action that actually generates the live URL for the trigger form and makes it accessible to the sales reps. Now, here is where new developers get incredibly frustrated.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Let's say you deploy version 1.0.0. It's live. A sales rep opens it and says, hey, you misspelled customer on the form.
A simple typo.
You cannot just go into the live form and fix the typo. You have to go back to your original editable draft, fix the spelling mistake, click release to generate a brand new frozen version 1.0.1, and then deploy that new version to replace the old one.
I hear this complaint constantly from citizen developers who are used to, updating a WordPress blog. They ask, why this tedious two-step bureaucratic process? Why the extra friction? Why can't I just hit publish and be done with it?
Exactly. It feels like redundant IT bureaucracy. Why can't I just fix the typo on the live form?
Because in enterprise architecture, strict version control is quite literally a matter of life and death for your business operations.
That sounds dramatic.
Well, imagine if you could edit a live process. Let's say your sales order process is currently active, routing hundreds of thousands of dollars a minute. Meanwhile, a developer is tinkering in the background, trying to add a new field to the form.
Okay.
If they make a mistake and accidentally drag a data mapping variable and hit save on a live system, the entire enterprise pipeline crashes instantly. Every order in transit fails. By aggressively separating the active release, which is versioning, from the active deploy, which is activation, SAP ensures that live operational processes are shielded from development environments.
It allows you to build, tinker, and test version 2.0 in a safe sandbox, while version 1.0 continues to run the company's revenue stream flawlessly.
Exactly. You don't want to try and change the jet engines while the plane is flying at 30,000 feet. The release and deploy separation is your required safety net.
That makes total sense when you frame it around risk mitigation. All right, final action items for the learner: running and monitoring. To run your newly deployed process, you simply open the deployed version in the BTT environment and access the generated trigger form URL.
You test it out.
You act as the sales rep, you fill out the fake data, you hit submit, and you watch it vanish. But to see what's actually happening behind the scenes, you have to monitor it.
This is where you put your IT administrator hat on and step into the control room.
You navigate back to the main SAP Build page. You click the specific monitoring tab at the top, and you go to Process and Workflow Instances. This is your omniscient dashboard.
You see everything.
You can see every single process currently running, completed, or failed. The tutorial notes that in a busy system, you will have to heavily adapt your filters to find your specific test. For example, filtering for instances triggered on a specific date like March 2026, or filtering by a specific process ID to trace the exact order you just submitted.
And discussing this monitoring dashboard brings up a truly important philosophical distinction about the end-user experience.
What's that?
According to the user persona data embedded in the SAP learning modules, the actual end users, the sales reps in the field, the regional managers approving the orders, they will never, ever see this backend builder.
Never.
They'll never see the lobby, they'll never see the condition bouncer, and they will never access this monitoring tab.
Right. Their entire interaction with this massive architecture we just built is confined to the forms via their My Inbox application or the process workspace.
It's just a clean interface.
To them, it just looks like a remarkably clean, simple digital task list on their phone or laptop. They see the data, they click approve or reject, and they move on with their day. They are completely insulated from the JSON APIs, the complex Boolean logic, and the version control schemas running furiously in the background.
Which is the absolute hallmark of brilliant enterprise design. You are engineering maximum complexity deep in the back-end architecture specifically to provide maximum frictionless simplicity for the human user on the front end.
Absolutely. Okay, let's bring this all home. We have been on quite the architectural journey today, moving from a broken manual nightmare to a fully automated enterprise engine.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We started by laying the foundation, building our business process project container to securely hold all our assets. We digitized the messy intake process by architecting a trigger form, aggressively enforcing required fields and specific data types to sanitize our data at the door.
Protecting the ERP.
Yes. We architected the middlemen, the approval and notification forms, putting our data under museum glass with read-only settings, and strictly enforcing SLAs with static duration timers.
No more reminder emails.
We gave the entire process a brain by programming if-else conditional logic, allowing the system to act as a bouncer and auto-approve low-risk orders. And finally, we locked our blueprints into immutable versions and safely deployed the solution into the live runtime environment.
It is a complete structural transformation. It reclaims lost time, it enforces compliance automatically, and it lets your humans go back to doing actual human work instead of acting as data routers.
It really is a game changer. So here is your final call to action. Do not just listen to this discussion and nod along.
You have to do it yourself.
Log into your SAP BTP free tier account, access the Build lobby, and start executing these specific action items. Build the forms, experiment with the data types, deliberately map the data wrong to see how the system throws an error and then fix it.
Break it to learn it.
Test the Boolean conditions with complex rules. The only way to truly master process automation is to get your hands dirty in the architecture and build the engine yourself.
And as you are building, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to ponder.
Oh, I love these. Let's hear it.
Throughout this entire deep dive today, we have built a highly efficient system, but it is entirely based on static, hard-coded rules.
Right.
Our intelligent conditions step asks a very binary, rigid question. Is the order mathematically less than 100,000? But if you look at the broader, rapidly evolving SAP ecosystem, you will see artificial intelligence and machine learning listed prominently across their product suite.
Oh, this is a fascinating angle to consider. Where does this go next?
Think about what happens when those static, hard-coded conditional rules are replaced by predictive, autonomous AI.
Okay, paint that picture.
What if that condition step doesn't just look at a dumb, fixed number like 100,000? What if, instead, the system is empowered to dynamically assess the real-time credit risk of the specific buyer using machine learning?
Wow.
What if, in the milliseconds between the form submission and the routing decision, the AI analyzes historical payment patterns, factors in breaking news about global supply chain disruptions, and assesses current currency market volatility before deciding whether an order is safe to auto-approve?
Wow. So the system isn't just blindly following a script we wrote. It's making nuanced, contextual business judgments in real time.
Exactly. The meticulously configured forms we built today, with their specific data types and read-only fields, they're incredible tools, but they're essentially just the sensory organs of the enterprise.
They just collect the data.
They collect clean data. But very soon, the brain interpreting that data won't be a simple if-else statement. It will be entirely autonomously intelligent. And preparing your architecture to handle that intelligence is where the true future of process automation is heading.
From a simple, broken X-ray to a fully autonomous predictive diagnostic engine, that is something to think about as you build. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Now go build something amazing.